How to load a muzzle-load rifle, turning a concerned eye towards oppressive sexual practice. You will need a lot of piss. Let it rest in the soil until the surface shows a white frost. This process may take up to a year. In that time, bacteria in the soil will oxidize the urea and produce the compound potassium nitrate, more commonly known as saltpeter. Saltpeter is also used as a meat preservative by large groups such as summer camps and the military. Its prevalence in groups comprised of male members led to the rumor that saltpeter would suppress sexual urges and decrease physical stimulation. Carefully mix 75% saltpeter, 15% charcoal, and 10% sulfur into a fine powder. Vigorous mixing may yield undesirable results, so take care to use caution. To test the effectiveness of your mixture, arrange a small line in a tightly wrapped row of paper. When you are finished, secure your new fuse and light carefully. Standing too close to high volumes of the propellant may prove fatal. Around this point, you may start to think of the difference between the words conflagrant and confluent. Conflagrant means setting ablaze or to ignite, while confluent means two things flowing together. The best way to achieve a perfectly round bullet is to drop molten metal from a great distance into a vat of water. As the metal falls, it cools to a near weightless form, leaving the edges smooth and symmetrical. The water cools the bullet upon impact. The amount of molten metal to be poured will vary depending on the size of your gun barrel. Boston Corbett was the Union soldier responsible for assassinating John Wilkes Booth. 7 years prior to this event, in an effort to be more like Jesus, Boston Corbett grew his hair long and castrated himself with a pair of scissors to avoid the temptation of prostitutes. Never leave the weapon primed. Swab the barrel of your rifle every 10 to 15 shots. Oil the rifle barrel frequently to discourage moisture accumulation. Always check the barrel for blockage or moisture before loading. Carefully pour a tiny amount of black powder down the barrel of the rifle. Always use a powder measure and never pour directly from a horn or flask. Tap the rifle against your foot or on the ground to settle the powder. Tightly wrap the bullet in a lubricated piece of fabric. The bullet should fit the barrel opening so tightly that only extreme force should be able to remove it. Men will give their lives if only the ordeal does not last long and is soon over, with all looking on and applauding, as though on a stage. Your rifle should have a ramrod. Ply out the ramrod and prop the packaged bullet in its cup. Slide the bullet with the ramrod down the shaft. Repeatedly strike the ramrod down, condensing the powder and joining it to the bullet. Once you had a horrible dream, where your parents were in an incestuous relationship. It wakes you into a cold sweat. You had never had a cold sweat before. You draw strength that the description cold sweat is entirely what you are experiencing, and you feel connected to whomever thought the term up. When you fall back to sleep, you dream of your childhood pet covered in fleas. Your gun is now primed and ready to fire. If this is your first time firing this particular firearm, you may be overcome with an overwhelming rush of responsibility. Before it was loaded, you felt it was a tool like a hammer. But now that it is loaded, you feel like you have to suppress something intangible. You feel cautious. You feel aware. During the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln suspended the writ of habeas corpus, allowing U.S. citizens to be imprisoned without a trial. He opposed free speech by arresting newspaper editors in the North and sending a few into exile. Not to mention that under his presidency, over 600,000 United States citizens died. With respect towards human rights granted by the Constitution, he was a tyrant. Your desire to suppress the intangible concern is lifting. You have an overwhelming sense of potential. The immediacy of your potency is overwhelming. You need to see more, you need to think of everything bigger than you in the world, not with the usual sense of awe and reserve, but with a twinkle of recognition. Boston Corbett feared God, so he emulated him. His Union cavalry had been charged with hunting down John Wilkes Booth. They had him cornered in a burning tobacco barn. Moments away from his surrender, Boston Corbett aimed between the slats in the barn's exterior and lodged a bullet in John Wilkes Booth's neck, paralyzing him instantly and killing him hours later. You hear a tone. It's a buzz. It's a song. You see the complicated colossus. He nurtures with his concern, yet he provides nothing save an end. You stare into his eyes as they shimmer and pulsate. He is a burning witness in the pyre. He is a fragrant rose in the lapel. The song overcomes you and you feel outside yourself. You give over to the hunter, and in this way, you become one with God. You are the snake of smoke, you are the pink of a nipple, and you need a lot of piss. As he lay dying, John Wilkes Booth requested his hands be held up to his face, and he uttered his final words. Useless. Useless. Useless.